Good morning. This morning, what goes on inside Britain's Sharia courts? We've been given exclusive access to one. Officially called Sharia councils, there are around 30 across the United Kingdom. They make rulings based on Sharia or Islamic law. Most cases involve women wanting to end their Islamic marriage. The councils aren't recognised by the UK system. Sharia law does not supersede British law, and these councils operate on a voluntary basis involving the consent of both parties. In her role as Home Secretary, Theresa May, now the frontrunner to be the next leader of the Conservative Party and next Prime Minister, ordered a review of Sharia councils following concerns about decisions which appeared to discriminate against women. Most of these councils operate inside mosques, and it's extremely rare to be given access to one. During our time filming in this council in Birmingham, we see judges asking one woman whether she couldn't just forget years of physical abuse she's endured in an arranged marriage. This from our reporter, Jean Mackenzie.
Do you feel insecure that he can hurt you?
If I see him, I suddenly, all my body starts shaking.
Britain's Sharia councils are under scrutiny.
Because he loves you also very much.
Yeah, but this is not enough.
They operate across the country, deciding on family matters using Islamic or Sharia law.
We were unhappy. Well, mostly I was unhappy because I wanted to have respect in my life.
Mainly they hear from Muslim women wanting to end their marriages.
They cannot go to civil courts because their marriages are only religious marriage. They come here in order to resolve those problems, issues in the sight of God.
But the government's concerned they may be discriminating against women. It's now investigating whether Sharia law is being misused.
Even from those that are considered quite good, women have come to us with negative stories, and some of these are very vulnerable women, and they should be treated with respect, not treated as second-class citizens.
We've been given rare access to one council to get an insight into how they work, and spoken to the women who use them.
We'd just like you to briefly tell us what has been the issue, mainly.
Each month, a panel of Islamic scholars meet in a side room of Birmingham Central Mosque with a full day of cases to get through.
And you say this marriage wasn't consummated?
No.
Right, okay.
Today, all the cases are women wanting a divorce. Some are here for the first time. Others may have been speaking to the council for months.
My passport had been taken off me and I wasn't allowed to use my telephone to make any contact.
Nasheen has come to escape a forced marriage.
That person, you've got to give your body, you've got to give everything to them. And if you're married,
no, you absolutely have every right.
And I don't
to not live in a marriage that you don't want to live in a marriage. So
this is regarded as one of the better councils. There are around 30 of them across the UK, sometimes referred to as courts. The judges make rulings based on Islam, which are not recognised by the British system.
It's a shame that she had to go through all of that. But this marriage, there's really no grounds really for this marriage to be sustained in any form or fashion.
After having her case considered, Nasheen gets her divorce.
We have decided this marriage to be finished from today.
Thank you.
But not all divorces are granted this easily, and some councils have been fiercely criticised for the way they treat women seeking their help. We've been given a number of testimonials of women who were too scared to talk to us.
I wanted a divorce because my husband used to rape me regularly. Also, he'd married again, but when I contacted the Sharia Council for a divorce, they pressured me into mediation, which I didn't want. It arranged the mediation with one of their local religious advisors, and I had to visit this man alone at his home. He asked me really personal questions about my sex life, and when I told him about the rapes, he said that polygamy was allowed. He said Be patient, you've lasted 22 years, why do you want a divorce now?
I am quite concerned about the way Sharia councils sometimes treat women, purely because of the cases that we get on the helpline, and they come in regularly.
At this helpline for Muslim women, a large number of the calls are about divorce.
Women have said, I just do not understand why they went into such detail. There was no need to go into that much detail, unless they're getting some thrill out of asking women these questions, I don't know, or making them feel uncomfortable as a bit of a punishment. I do feel that sometimes Muslim women are discriminated against by panel members, and I think what's interesting for us is that there's no good and bad Sharia councils, because sometimes we'll say, well, this one's not very good and this one's much better, but even from those that are considered quite good, women have come to us with negative stories.
So why do women use these councils? Often it's because they've had an Islamic marriage without also having a civil, legally binding one. Under Islam, a man can end this marriage himself, but a woman cannot.
We got married, I was 15, and it was arranged marriage.
And this was in Afghanistan?
In Iran, actually.
In Iran?
Yeah, Iran, because we moved to Iran because of Taliban that time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Back in Birmingham, the council hears from Yasmina, who also wants a divorce.
It started with arguments every day, almost.
Straight after the marriage?
Even before marriage.
Even before marriage?
Yeah. But I think if I went to the English court, you know, he will say, where is their right to decide about my life? So now he can't say anything because their decision has been made on Sharia rules, and we all believe on that.
There's a lot of women who come here are in really quite bad situations, and we try to do as much as possible to help them.
What options would women have if you weren't here?
They really wouldn't have anywhere to go. So it's absolutely crucial that we provide this service, because if we've left them in these miserable situations, distraught, they don't know what to do, where to go, and often fall into deep depression.
He was a different person, you know, with me. He was always angry and he wanted everything in his way.
In the life, ups and down comes. Argument, happiness, these comes in marital life. But what was the turning point that you decided to be separate?
It was violence.
Violence.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh.
So,
because
physical assault?
Yeah. Okay. Physical, emotional. And
the biggest concern about the councils is that they can put women at risk. In some extreme cases, women have been refused divorces from violent marriages and instead told to mediate with their husbands.
I applied to a Sharia council for a divorce after suffering domestic violence, and I was told that I needed to attend the council with my husband. I told them I couldn't. I was in danger. There were injunctions stopping him going anywhere near me, but despite my protests, the Sharia council arranged some mediation for us. They refused to accept that I was in fear of my life. They then insisted I brought along 2 Muslim witnesses to confirm I was telling the truth. My husband didn't require any witnesses. I didn't know anyone I could ask.
We feel that in incidences of domestic violence, and particularly when the woman does not want to mediate and she makes it very clear, there should be no pressure whatsoever, because in fact by bringing them together in one room you could be putting them in danger, particularly if there's non-molestation orders.
Do you think that there are some councils out there who aren't treating women in the best way?
I regularly hear about that, and I'm sad to hear those cases.
Do you think that there are any councils that put women in danger?
I think as far as the councils are concerned, women decide themselves voluntarily to go to them. And if they choose to decide that this council isn't treating them equally, they can withdraw very easily. No woman has to go anywhere as such.
Are you feel secure, unsecure that he can hurt you?
If I see him, I suddenly, all my body starts shaking and I can't change it, unfortunately. 4 years I tried and I worked hard in this country alone with 4 children, so still I couldn't accept him.
Because he loves you also very much.
Yeah, but this is not enough. Doesn't have any value, unfortunately.
It is not possible to forget all the things and start.
Despite Yasmina's insistence, the council wants to be sure her marriage can't be resolved.
It's been 4 years. I have no feeling. I don't even want to remember him.
But in the previous meeting which we had with your husband, he was insisting that I would do anything. He's saying that I love my wife as well, and I've always loved her. And my children, I love them as well. Our first objective here is to try and
focus on family.
Exactly. So that's why Sheikh Bukhari is asking you as well that.
But family needs a happy mother.
Yeah. What we'll do is we'll just discuss now. If for 5 minutes, if you could take a seat outside.
Yeah, sure.
And then we call you.
Getting this sort of access to a council is extremely rare. Most hearings take place in private, and there are no rules or regulations they have to follow. The government has commissioned a review to try and understand them better. It wants to find out whether Sharia law is being exploited at women's expense. Do you think the government is going to be able to change anything?
I'm not sure if the review will lead to anything, because at the end of the day, I'm guessing they will come up with some examples of good practice, highlight some of the bad practice, and come up with some recommendations. But who is going to force these bodies to implement those recommendations?
What would you like to say to the government about Sharia councils?
If they really want to help those women, is to come on board and see what's actually going on, how these women are being helped, and coming out of oppressive and depressive situations, which would otherwise would be impossible for them.
Take a seat. Looking at all the circumstances and all that you've gone through, we've all unanimously decided that your marriage has been nullified. And
when they announced, I felt that something happened that I wanted for years. I'm really surprised, because they cared about my emotions. I thought, finally, got my freedom.
Yasmina and Nosheen have both got what they wanted. It's come at a price, though.
The best £300 I've ever spent.
That's what people always say. It's the best money that they've spent.
I'm going to frame this now.
But this system doesn't work for everyone.
I paid the Sharia Council £170, and after 2 years, still didn't have my divorce.
It's clear that standards vary, and the lack of regulation is a concern. But very few in this community think getting rid of councils is the answer. Instead, it's improving the rights of Muslim women, so they don't need to come here in the first place.
I had done it for so long, I felt as if I was just hitting my head against a brick wall.
Once her hearing's over, Nosheen decides to speak openly about her experience.
I feel as if that Sharia Council do help lives. They do, because if they didn't, then if they weren't here, how would women get on with their lives? They'd just be trapped. They'd just be trapped with the lies that their families have told them, which is a man can only give you a divorce, and it's not a woman can ask for a divorce. And I've just done it, and it's the best thing that I've done.
Officially called Sharia councils, their use in the UK to settle disputes using Islamic religious law has been criticised for discriminating against women. It's rare to be allowed inside a council. This is the story of one woman who we're calling Yasmina, who went to the court to divorce her husband.
When we got married, I was 15, and it was arranged marriage.
Right.
Yeah.
And this was in Afghanistan?
In Iran actually.
In Iran?
Yeah, Iran, because we moved to Iran because of Taliban that time.
Okay.
It started with arguments every day.
Straight after the marriage?
Even before marriage.
Even before marriage?
Yeah. He was different person, you know, with me. He was always angry and he wanted everything in his way.
In the life, ups and down comes. Argument, happiness, this comes in marital life. But what was the turning point that you decided to be separate?
It was violence.
Violence.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
So,
because you have
physical assault?
Yeah.
Okay.
Physical, emotional, and.
Are you feel secure, unsecure that he can hurt you or he can?
Something here makes me afraid of him and scared of him. If I see him, I suddenly, you know, all my body starts shaking and I can't change it. Unfortunately, 4 years I tried and I worked hard in this country alone with 4 children. So still I couldn't accept him.
Because he loves you also very much.
Yeah, but this is not enough. Doesn't have any value, unfortunately.
It is not possible to forget all the things and restart.
Because I have no feeling. I don't even want to remember.
I mean, arguments happen in every family. Every relation there's arguments.
But respect is
very important. And, you know, maybe I shout at my wife. In the evening I go and I take a present with me. And, you know, you forget. But having this continuously going on and having this kind of feeling that you're suppressed is not allowed. In the previous meeting which we had with your husband, he was insisting that I would do anything. He's saying that I love my wife as well, and I've always loved her, and my children, I love them as well. Our first objective here is to try and
focus on family.
Exactly. So that's why Sheikh Bukhari is asking you as well that.
But family needs a happy mother.
Yeah. That's a
you
definite.
know, if I am not happy, if emotionally I am damaged, because what I think, he damaged me and now he decided to be a good person. Well, what about me here in this situation?
What we'll do is we'll just discuss now. If for 5 minutes, if you could take a seat outside,
Sure.
and then we'll call you back. Shukran for your time.
The strongest thing she has said, that is, that he has a feeling of being unsecure with him. It seems it is an emotional, insecure, and also physical also. This is the big thing what she has said.
Shall take a seat. We've unanimously decided, looking at all the circumstances and all that you've gone through, that we've all unanimously decided that your marriage has been nullified. We are very sad to hear. We are very sad to hear all the hardships you've gone through, and we feel that no woman should be going through such, hardship. And for the future, we wish you all the best. And if there's any help you require, the masjid is always free, and you could always come and you could put your concerns forward. Inshallah, we are more than happy to help you.
Yasmina's story. And if you want to watch and share the full film, you can find it on our programme page, bbc.co.uk/Victoria. Sharia is Islam's legal system, and there are around 30 Sharia courts in the UK. Officially called Sharia councils, they mainly operate inside mosques. And the majority of cases that they preside over involve women wanting to end their Islamic marriage. They're not recognised by the UK system, they have no official legal powers, and a review into them is currently underway. Let's talk about this now with Baroness Cox, who is a crossbench peer who's campaigned against these councils for years. Kola Hassan, who is one of the religious scholars at the Leighton Sharia Council, and Rani Bilku, who runs a women's rights organisation and is planning to deliver training to Sharia councils to try and improve their standards. Welcome, all of you. Baroness Cox, when you heard when you heard one of the scholars say to Yasmina, "Is it not possible to forget all the things he's done to you?" What did you think?
Well, I have two fundamental worries. The first is that we have in Sharia law a system inherently discriminating against women. In Britain, we're meant to be promoting gender equality. In Sharia law, the man can just divorce his wife by saying, "I divorce you 3 times." The lady has to go through all these kind of procedures, has to pay. She often doesn't have the money. That is inherent gender discrimination, as is the polygamy. The man can have 4 wives, the lady 1, and we don't allow bigamy in this country. There's also endorsement of physical violence under chastisement. There's a lot going on, which is very worrying in a country where we're meant to be having gender equality. And the other very briefly concern that I have is it's a kind of parallel quasi-legal system. In this country, we celebrated Magna Carta last year, 800 years. We're now going back to a parallel legal system, which puts us pre-Magna Carta. So my two main concerns: women suffer from inherent gender discrimination, and we have a parallel quasi-legal system.
Kola Hassan, women should be able to leave their husbands whenever they want and without seeking permission, surely?
Oh yes, of course.
So why do we need Sharia councils?
Well, if you live in Britain, you would have to go to civil court. A woman can't just divorce her husband by sitting at home and saying, "I divorce my husband," and walking away.
So why not go to the civil court?
Because we are dealing with religious marriages, not civil marriages. Where, you know, almost every Muslim in this country will have 2 marriage ceremonies. They will have a religious marriage and they will have a civil marriage. A lot won't have the civil marriage, but they will always certainly have a religious marriage because they want to be married in the sight of God. So when they get divorced, when the marriage is breaking up, they need that religious divorce as well. And just as they would go to civil court to get a civil divorce,
why do they need that religious divorce as well?
Because there is that desire, isn't it, within the human being who comes from a religious faith practice, who lives by a religion and fears God, and when they got married, they had a religious marriage.
Sure, but we don't need it in Britain, do we? That woman could just say, "I'm divorcing you."
Well, no, she couldn't just say, "I'm divorcing you." She'd have to go to civil court to get a civil divorce, and that would take a few years as well.
Sure.
And that would time.
So that's enough?
Well, women would like that religion. No, it's not just women, by the way, it's men as well.
Sure,
I think we have
that's
to
enough.
realise
The civil court process, British legal system, is enough.
It could be, but if people are choosing to live by a faith and saying that when it comes to marriage, which is the central part of our lives, we would like a religious divorce to make us feel that closure in the sight of God.
Baroness Cox, do you accept that actually these councils only work because of the consent of the women?
Yes, of course I accept there must be religious freedom, and if women really believe this, they want an Islamic divorce so they can remarry in Islamic terms, that's fine. But why does a man just get it by saying, "I divorce you 3 times?
Well, that's not true as well.
Well, it is true. It's very true.
Please listen. There has been so much evolving within the Islamic tradition throughout the Islamic world, and nowhere do any legal systems in the Islamic world allow a man to just say, "I divorce you," and end the marriage.
Okay. But some of these
All over
councils,
the world, they have to go to court.
Some of these councils do tell women to go back to husbands who are abusing them.
If they do,
then
they should stop. They should
of course they should stop, but they're doing it.
Well, they need to be stopped then.
How? There is no regulatory system. How are they to be stopped?
That's the issue. We do need a regulatory system. And so far, you know, the Muslim community has been trying itself. Sadly, it has failed. And I actually welcome the government's review, because I think if somebody was to get involved and create a regulatory system, that would really help the issue.
That would also legitimise the councils, which presumably you wouldn't be happy with, Baroness Cox.
No, I believe in religious freedom, but I'm deeply concerned women themselves are unhappy. Many Muslim women come to me and they do disagree with you. They do say the man just does divorce them by saying, "I divorce you 3 times." That does happen.
Which is why we've introduced a system to stop that.
But it's not working at the moment. These women are really suffering, and my private member's bill is trying to help these women who are really suffering and to support the measures to try and help them out of their terrible predicament. And it does allow religious sanctification of religious punishment, chastisement.
That's
and a lot
really
of the women,
unfair.
No, it is true. A lot of the women are really suffering domestic violence.
I know they are. The vast majority of my clients who come to me are suffering domestic violence, and that is such a legitimate reason for getting a divorce. And we will facilitate that as quickly as possible to get them out of those abusive marriages. We're actually helping women whose men are saying, "Well, no, I can do what I like to you," and we're turning around and saying, "No, you can't."
I've got some questions from Facebook Live. We're streaming our conversation on Facebook right now. Rob says, Sharia should be illegal under UK law. There should be one law for everybody.
There is only one law for everybody, which is a civil legal system. But when we're talking about religion, praying, fasting, the way we conduct our personal lives in our homes, that is perfectly allowed under English law. We are a mediation body that is offering mediation and a religious divorce. We are not contradicting the English legal system in any way.
But you are parallel to it?
We are not parallel to it. We are offering a mediation service. The English legal system wants people to have mediation when the marriage is breaking down. It's actually part of the English legal system now. Courts will insist, judges will insist that a couple whose marriage is breaking up and have come for a civil divorce get mediation. We offer mediation in a culturally sensitive environment where people understand the language of the people, the culture, the religion, etc.
And if you don't want mediation, you just want the divorce?
Well, we'll give that. Obviously, there are questions that are going to be asked.
What about the case which we featured in our film earlier, where a woman was asked to come to mediation with her violently abusive husband?
If a husband is violently abusive, there will generally be some sort of non-molestation order, some sort of legal order, and there is no way we can have the two together in the same room.
OK. Oluyomi asks, what are the rights of women under Sharia law?
Immense. It depends what you're talking about, but a woman has a right to get married, to get divorced, to have children, to work, to own her money, to own her property, to inherit. What are you asking?
Rani Bilku, let me bring you in. Baroness Cox says this is a parallel legal system. To some of the comments I've seen on Twitter and on email and so on, it feels like a parallel universe to some people. How would you describe it?
I think I agree with Baroness Cox to a certain degree, and also to Coles. One of the issues that we're looking at, where women are coming to us and saying, in terms of mediation, the mediation within the courts in this country is very different to what the mediation within the Sharia councils are. Their form of mediation is to go back home together and try to work it out for the sake of the children. There's complexities in any marriage when they're breaking down. When there's complexities of cousin marriages and marriages within the brotherhood or the of a community, it is far more complex. And I think whilst I agree to a certain degree Sharia councils do have a role, however, when you're putting women significantly at harm, then I have a problem. And the issue of sexual violence, rape within marriage, is not recognised by many within the community. But aligned to that, we have Sikhs, Hindus and people with other faith here. We don't have actually any parallel systems there. We work quite well.
OK. If Sharia councils did not exist, if they were banned, which is what you would like, Baroness Cox, no?
No, not exactly.
OK, go on.
What I would like, I believe in religious freedom.
Right.
You said, of course, whether you pray or fast, that's not a problem.
Yeah.
What I am concerned about is any kind of body which gives rulings which are directly incompatible with the fundamental laws, values, principles, policies of our country.
All right. What about those Muslim women who want a divorce from their husband and they feel that they need to get the divorce through a Sharia council or else they can't move on with their life? What would they do if they couldn't do that at a Sharia council?
Well, you have to go back one step. The fundamental asymmetry. One lady came to me in floods of tears. Her husband had sent her divorce through the post. And she said, I read my divorce. My Imam says it's genuine. I am divorced. I'm betrayed by democracy. How can this happen in Britain? I get my divorce through the post. Now, if she wants to get a divorce, she has to go through the kind of procedures which we've seen. There's a fundamental asymmetry there, which is unjust and should not be allowed in Britain today.
OK, so what are you suggesting then?
Well, we're suggesting that there needs to be a serious investigation into what happens, and that those policies of Sharia courts or councils which contravene our British fundamental values of gender equality and one law for all should not be permitted. Other matters, such as fasting, prayer, no problem. These are matters women are really suffering in ways our suffragettes would turn in their graves in Britain today.
Thank you all very much for coming on the programme. Some comments from you watching around the country. This from Anu on Facebook. Thank you very much for your report this morning on Sharia councils. I never knew that there were any in the UK. This completely has opened my eyes and changed so much inside me. All the people who are criticising you for reporting this would rather put their head in the sand and pretend that everything is OK. This email from Shamim. Most of the people complaining about Sharia courts are Islamophobic. And one more, people choose to use Sharia courts just like any couple chooses to settle out of court. Thank you for those. Do keep them coming in. This morning, we've been bringing you exclusive access inside one of Britain's Sharia courts. Officially called councils, there are around 30 in Britain. In her role as Home Secretary, Theresa May, the now frontrunner to be the next leader of the Conservative Party and next Prime Minister, ordered a review of Sharia councils following concerns about discriminatory decisions. It's due to report back next year, but has already been described as a whitewash. Let's talk to Mariam Namazi, who's an Iranian secular human rights campaigner and one of those who's been critical of the government review into these councils, and Dr. Samia Bano, who's a senior lecturer at the School of Oriental and African Studies and author of the book Muslim Women and Sharia Councils. She was consulted about the review. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
What's the problem?
Well, I mean, we're very happy that a review is taking place. It's way overdue. Our problem is that it's set up like a Sharia court in and of itself. It's got a theologian who's chairing it. It's got imams acting as advisors. And the terms of reference are so limited. So it's only looking at best practice rather than the fundamental question of whether, you know, women, just because they have different beliefs, shouldn't have access to equal rights and equality before the law. It's sort of legitimizing a parallel legal system, and we're asking for a more thorough review, one that's judge-led and one that will be centred on human rights, not religion.
Do you agree?
Well, I do agree with many of Miriam's concerns. I think there is a concern about how the panel was composed. But I would say that there's two key issues. Firstly, whether or not who was included on the panel and whether or not we can get that independent report that many of us working in this field have been asking for. I would say we would need at this stage to wait and see, because there are two key issues that the report can potentially report on. Firstly, with Professor Mona Siddiqui as head of it, what precisely is going on in these councils? What kind of Sharia law? What is Islamic law? There has been a gap in knowledge, and that needs to be addressed. And secondly, when we have panel members such as Sir Mark Headley and Anne-Marie Hutchinson...
He's a former judge.
He's a former
retired,
judge.
Yeah.
And Anne-Marie Hutchinson, who is a human rights lawyer and has worked in the field of children and human rights and gender too. We can potentially also have that critical perspective. But I do share Miriam's concerns in terms of who precisely is on there. Now, Victoria, you mentioned that I was briefly consulted on the panel. Some of us were made ourselves available to be on the panel, and we were, so we weren't on the panel. So I do share that concern in terms of whether or not the human rights.
All right,
aspect.
very briefly, 20 seconds.
I mean, I think the problem is that even with the statements that Mona Siddiqui has made after the fact, is that she thinks there is a place for religion in the law. What we're saying is that if women are going to get access to their human rights and to justice, religion can't be part of the law. Full stop.
Thank you. We did ask for an interview with the Home Office, but they declined and instead told us that no religious code can be an excuse for discrimination against women.